This might look like a boring car, but I think it presents a pretty exciting opportunity, an opportunity that can net us several $1,000s in just a few days. You see, a big franchise dealer took this twin-turbo Genesis G90 in on trade and immediately dumped it at auction, and probably for a good reason. It was listed as is with an oil pressure warning, and they suggested that it needed a new engine. But at the same time, the car was marked as running and driving, and they even had this photo of the gauge cluster with the engine on and not a single warning light. Now, low oil pressure can be caused by a number of different things. It could be as simple as you just don't have enough oil in the engine, or it could be more severe, like one of the parts responsible for circulating the oil in your engine has failed. And if you run an engine on low oil pressure for even a few seconds, it could be catastrophic. So it totally makes sense why they marked this car as is. But if you look at that picture from the auction of the gauge cluster, the engine's clearly running. And on any of these newer cars, if there is low oil pressure, there's usually huge warning graphics that pop up telling you, stop the engine immediately, you got a problem. Now, this car ran through the auction block week after week, and it wasn't catching a single bid near its wholesale price. The big franchise dealer that had it for sale put it up for a make-an offer, and that's what drew me to it, because when I offered half of what it would retail for, they actually accepted. Now, I'll definitely do a full cost breakdown shortly once I figure out how much this will all cost to sort, but I went ahead and ordered transport for the Genesis. When it was dropped off, the delivery driver left it running, and it sounded totally normal from the outside, but just to make sure this thing would make it home, I popped the hood and pulled the dipstick. And everything looked fine. This thing was way nicer than I thought it would be, and it drives outstanding, but as soon as I came to my first complete stop, the oil pressure light came on the dash. Come on, this can't be right. If this thing really had low oil pressure right now, I'm pretty sure you'd hear some really bad noises. This has to be just a bad sender. All right, look at this. When the car starts moving, the light completely goes away. Let's stop again, see if it comes back. Yeah, it comes back, but this can't be low oil pressure. This thing just feels too strong. Like almost as strong as I feel after a workout with Trainwell. This isn't just a fitness app, it's your very own real personal trainer in your pocket. Mike is my personal trainer. He's created this workout based on my goals. Throughout each session, I leave notes to Mike, and as I do this, he fine-tunes our training. The best part for me is that I can complete an entire workout from home in the amount of time it would take for me to pack up and drive to a gym. And while there's no special equipment required, Trainwell's personal trainers can create you a gym-based workout. Oh, here's Mike checking in now.
Hey Sam, how you doing?
I can't believe it's been a month, really. The first week I was doing the workouts, I was struggling on the third set. In just a week's time, I could progressively see myself being able to stay up no problem, 3 sets of 30 seconds of these planks.
It's amazing that you've seen that progress so fast, and I think it's a really great thing for everyone to know. Progress doesn't always take years, right? You can see changes every single week, and now week 4 it feels like you're definitely ready for the next challenge.
I work out with Trainwell 3 days a week, and I've been doing it over a month now, and I hope you guys can see a difference because I can feel the difference. And I think the big difference is that little extra motivation I get from Mike. It's greatly improved my energy levels and the overall way I feel. And if you're like me and always wanted to get into a workout routine but kind of lack the motivation to do so, you gotta check out Trainwell. Just go right here or hit the link down in the description box. And when you do, you're gonna get 14 days with your very own personal trainer for free. There's really nothing to lose here except for maybe a few pounds. Just hit that link in the description box and start working out with your very own personal trainer over at Trainwell. At this point, I'm pretty sure we just have a faulty sensor, and it's a common issue on a lot of older cars, and usually it's a pretty simple part to replace. I did it on this V10 Dodge Viper truck recently, and the whole job probably took about 5 to 10 minutes. Unplug the sensor, unthread it, replace it, and that's it. Super easy. To see if others were having the same issue, I did a quick Google search and found quite a bit of discussion in general when it came to Hyundais, Kias, and also Genesises. Didn't matter the year, make, or model, they all end up having problems with their oil pressure sensors. Also, there's a video here on YouTube from a guy named Clean Tricks, and he basically describes the same exact issues we're having.
As you can see, the oil light is actually on right there, and generally speaking, it turns on whenever it is at a stop the out-of-pocket cost that they quoted me was going to be around $2,600 to get that sensor replaced.
Now, the twin-turbo engine in this Genesis is shared with the Kia Stinger. The Stinger is much more of an enthusiast car, and I found there to be much more information about this issue on the Stinger forums. One person was even quoted $3,600 just to replace the same sensor, and there was actually a good bit of insight as to the location of the sensor. Supposedly it's underneath the intake manifold. So there'll be a bit of disassembly here, but I don't anticipate it being $3,600 worth of work. Now, if this were my personal car and I was just daily driving it, I would just ignore that light entirely and keep driving it as is. It's not that annoying. It doesn't even chime when it pops on, and we know that there's no oil pressure issues in this engine. However, if I want to sell it, it's only reasonable that it gets fixed, because I think it'd be a little difficult trying to explain to a prospective buyer that, hey, you know, that light might come on, it's warning you, your engine might blow up, but don't worry about it, doesn't mean anything. I'm very anxious to see what people mean when they say that the oil pressure sender is buried in this car, because when you just look at the engine, first of all, look at the front of it. It's nice and clean, and to me it looks like a Honda. A ton of room to work from here to the fan. Take, for example, your cam position sensor here. It's held in with 2 bolts. You could swap that thing out in probably a whole 3 or 4 minutes. And I mean, just everything is really easy to get to. The belt, nice and easy. The minimal accessories in the way here. I guess the switch itself is underneath our engine cover here, but this is reminding me so far a lot like a Honda. And of course, I speak way too soon, because this part of it looks nothing like a Honda. Wow, there are a lot of hoses and random connectors going to this manifold. This is strange. It's also like uneven, right? We've got the intake portion over here on the passenger side. Just looking at it, like, take a look at this. If you wanted to do your spark plugs, there's your ignition coils down there. You'd have to take the intake manifold out. I bet you the dealership charges a lot of money to do spark plugs on this car. I guess you could do the driver's side here, but okay, it's a little bit more involved than I imagined, but as long as we figure out where things start and end, we should be able to get them out of the way. This all looks like a complicated mess at first, but once you just undo a bunch of those pigtails, a couple bolts, you can see it gives us a much better view of where this intake is installed. We can get the foam out of the way, and I'm guessing our sensor is somewhere down there. All right. What in the heck am I even looking at? There's like nothing under here. Oh, more foam. Even though there's more stuff, this lower manifold is held in with just a bunch of hex bolts here. So let's pop those out of place. We got a couple other little hoses here, and I'm betting we land right on our sensor. I'm pretty sure all the bolts are out of this thing, and I'm pulling on it with all my might, and it's not coming out. So what if we grab this guy here and give it a little wiggle? Let's see here. Oh, yeah. All right, I messed around with that for a good 5 minutes. It needs to be angled all the way to one side, and then it can be simply lifted up and out like we just did. There we go. All right. We got more foam, and we better have a sensor somewhere. What in the heck? All these pigtails I'm seeing are going to the fuel rails. Is there anything in this place? Oh my goodness, what a job. No wonder they charge so much money for it. Seriously, I don't see anything here, at least nothing obvious, but I see all these pigtails coming down. Where are they running? I see one right here. This cable is going underneath the injectors. I want to get a scope camera in here, make sure we're doing the right thing, because we've taken off so much stuff in order to find this little sensor, and at this point, there's not much more to take apart here.
Now, it took me a while, but when I got this angle right here, I could see a connector going into what has to be our oil pressure sensor.
It's starting to make sense why this is such an expensive job, especially now that we're messing with the fuel system. First off, we have to disconnect all of our hard fuel lines, and now we can pull up on the rails. These injectors are pressed into the cylinder head, so they're gonna take a bit of force to get out. And I always like to keep these spare hockey pucks around because they're really great to protect any of the surrounding surfaces while using a pry bar. And with a little bit of back and forth rocking, the rails came free.
All right, both the rails are up and we can finally see this thing, but of course we run into one final boss before we actually get to it. So you see underneath this wire, that's it right there. That's the sensor. It's threaded in to this guy right here. Problem is, this fuel injector, out of all three, look, the one that decided to stay stuck is the one that is directly in our way. And these, they're Teflon sealed in place. So half the time they come out with the rail, the other half the time they get stuck in. You can see that that math is accurate because we have 6 injectors, 2 on this side stayed in, and then this one. And getting these out is a pain.
I worked at that injector for a long time, just kind of pushing it back and forth, turning it all around, and it finally came out in 2 pieces. So we're gonna have to source a replacement for this. This is no fun, because direct injection injectors are usually pretty expensive, and a lot of the times you got to stick to the dealer for these.
So you can see that the sensor itself is threaded into an oil port, and as the engine is running, it's able to tell whether the car has good oil pressure or not. Now when I unclip the harness here, you can see it's oily in there. And it makes sense why our light comes on and off. It's probably getting an intermittent signal because, well, the oil is contaminated, the electrical side of things here. There's a seal inside that sensor that will stop the flow of oil through it. That seal has failed, and so that means our sensor needs to come out. Now I've got the appropriate size wrench here. However, I have no clue how you're gonna get this in here. There's no way you're gonna get a deep socket over that thing. And it's just a matter of trying to find out the right angle to remove this thing. Oh, look at that right there. So it kind of goes on the opposite of the way you think it would go on. There we go. Look at that. We got a turn on it.
Getting that first turn felt good, but as soon as you work this out of the threads, it becomes more difficult to fit the wrench in place. So I just smacked the connector end off the sensor, and it broke right off. And it allowed for way more space and a very quick removal. But that exposes a new problem we'll have while installing the replacement. Since we obviously have to keep it intact, we really need a tool that will get around to spin it in place, and the wrench is simply too thick to fit. So to fix that, I just ground it down all around, and this worked out pretty incredible. And I would suggest to anyone who's going to do this job to just buy a spare 24mm wrench and be prepared to sacrifice it. But once it's finally tightened in place, everything just goes back together in reverse. I was luckily able to source a spare fuel injector at the parts store. It was an OE part with the Kia and Hyundai stamps on it, and it set us back $120. Add that to the cost of the oil pressure sensor, which was $80, and we're in this about $200. Now truthfully, a dealer would call for a handful of other little seals and gaskets to be replaced during this process, which would add probably another 100 or so to the job, but when I visually checked the condition of all these, they look pretty good, although I did have to adjust one of the little seals that had moved out of place. At this point, most everything's back together. I did leave a few brackets and fasteners off in case we need to take things back down again, but let's just fire it up and see how it sounds.
You can see I left one thing undone right here. That was a coolant hose. All right, we're gonna give that another shot. Let's see here. All right, no more long crank because all the rails have had time to prime. And yeah, there we go. Everything seems to be running, idling real nice. So I'm gonna go and just finish up the final assembly, and then we can take it for a ride. Currently stopped at a red light, and we've got no oil pressure warning. We're gonna drive it a little longer here, make sure it doesn't come back, but I'm pretty confident that that problem has been sorted. But driving this Genesis around, just for the few days that I've had it,
is really impressive. Obviously, this is an older model, and I've always thought of these Genesis luxury sedans as kind of like your budget luxury sedan, but I looked up the prices on them, and I don't think you can call them budget luxury sedans anymore. This car retailed new for around $70,000. The nice thing about it is it comes with pretty much all the options. I think they have one trim higher that comes with a V8 engine, but it's got everything. It has really high resolution screens that are impressive. The backup camera is beautiful, heated and cooled seats, rear sunshade, soft closed doors. It really reminds me of like a Lexus LS. But here's the really funny part. I looked up a brand new Lexus LS 500. It starts at $80,000. The latest Genesis G90 base price is $89,000. So a Genesis now costs more than the flagship Lexus, which is, well, I don't know about you. If I was shopping one or the other, I'd probably stick with the Lexus, but Toyota and Lexus have had reliability issues with their new twin-turbo V6 engines, and everyone seems to love these Genesis cars, and I can understand why. You look at the fit and finish and just the way the interior is trimmed, it's a lot more new school than the Lexus stuff. Lexus has always been about quality, reliability, and with that, things haven't progressed a lot. Yes, they still have great modern tech in them, but they still kind of have that older car feel, and this feels relatively new. And again, this is an old model. The only thing that I could compare this to in recent memory that is as nice of a car is the Bentley Bentayga that I had, and I think that there's some things in here that are better than the Bentley, like the technology. The screens are bigger, the resolution is better, and it costs 1/5 the price. The fact that I'm comparing a Bentley to a Genesis is the reason why these Genesis cars, they're pretty costly. They put together a true luxury car contender that doesn't disappoint. And the fact that this one only costs $12,000, I mean, it's an insane amount of car. And I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head anything that would come close to this as far as how modern it is, how nice it is, just how overall good of a car it is for this price range. I'm generally not looking for cars to flip. Believe it or not, I don't think it's as glamorous of a business as people like to convey here online. However, sometimes things really stick out to you, and this was one of them, especially at the price. $12,100 was the final make and offer price. Then the auction got another $500 fee on top of that. So the car was a total of $12,600. I spent a couple $100 putting in that pressure sender switch and also the fuel injector. So all in, I've got $12,800 into it. It's a 2017 model year G90 with rear wheel drive, and you can find them all over the internet for sale between $23,000 and $27,000 or $28,000. So again, we're about half of what this would retail for. I think if you stuck it on a classified around $20,000, it would move pretty quick. But if I just wanted to go the really easy route and send it back through auction, I could now send it as a green light since it's all working properly. And I would imagine it would wholesale between $17,000 and $18,000. So I think there's anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 in this car for what turned out to be a moderate amount of work. Putting the business part aside, I'm really excited I got to experience a Genesis because it totally changed my perception. I always thought that these were cut-rate luxury sedans, and they're clearly not cut-rate at all. And I'm pretty sure that the Lexuses, which I have shopped before, they tend to hold their value much better, which makes them much more expensive if you were to compare, same model year car with a similar amount of miles. And if this was, $15,000 or $20,000 cheaper, I would highly suggest somebody check this car out before they spent that extra $15,000 or $20,000 because it seems to be that nice. And I want to hear from you guys down in the comments, especially those of you with longer term Genesis experience. How do these things hold up over time? Is it anything like a Lexus? I've seen several LS 430s with over 200,000 miles and very few hard part replaces. I think those were kind of the pinnacle of automotive reliability. And obviously times have changed a lot with hybrids and turbochargers, but time should improve that. And it'll be really interesting to see if this is one of those cars that is on the road after 250,000 miles. Make sure you're following the channel so you're the first to know when a new video goes live. And guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching today. I'll catch you very soon.